Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome back down the Red Rabbit Hole. We love that you keep coming back down here with us. We're very much enjoying your company. I'm trying not to sound too desperate, like I did on our last outro, but there you go. It is what it is. It is what it is. I am who I am. There's nothing I can do about it now. Whether it's nature or nurture, this is what you've got.
Isn't that Popeye saying, I am's what I am?
I don't know, but I have had some spinach today. So maybe.
You have had your spinach, all right.
Yeah.
That was an unexpected turn so early in the podcast.
I know, it happens sometimes. I get possessed by cartoon characters.
So, Nicky and Clare, you're both still here.
We are. Claire, you survived the week.
I did.
How was the mud coffee?
I mean, I've had better. I've had worse.
This is going to be another 1-star review for our Airbnb, isn't it, Lisa?
It is. Our Tripadviser's not looking good, is it? Well, we could become one of those TikTok things, because people do that on TikTok where they go and visit places with really bad reviews. Just
I enjoy bad reviews. I enjoy reading bad reviews of books and everything, because I always think about the person behind that bad review and what's happened to make them so angry with everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I remember my first bad review. I mean, we all remember our first bad reviews, but my first bad review, it was really long-winded and ended with, I hate it when bad writers get good ideas.
Oh,
that's harsh.
Yeah. So I was like, well, at least I had a good idea, love.
Yes, exactly.
What have you got?
It always cheers me up to then go and look at the 1-star reviews of like proper classics like Pride and Prejudice. It says things like, it's just a load of people mooning around.
Yeah.
Anyway, following on from our discussion, so we were talking about, unfortunately, in a bit of a dark place, we were talking about children who kill children. Kind of reminded me of, I think there was a poem, I can't remember who wrote it now, that came out after the James Bulger case, which was really responding to the public outcry around the case, which said they wanted to kill the kids who'd killed the kid because there's nothing worse than killing a kid. And it's kind of passing comment on that the outcry, because they were named very early. People were calling for, really harsh sentencing of those boys. So what I wanted to share with you, I don't know if you've heard of this before, and I'm gonna absolutely go out there and apologize to anyone from Norway that my pronunciation is going to be appalling on this, I no doubt, is Silje Redegard. I don't know if either of you have ever heard of what happened to Silje. So it was about 20 months after the Bulger case. So it's very similar time. It was October 1994. And Silje Marie Redegard, a 5-year-old girl, was killed by 2 6-year-old boys in Trondheim in Norway. They were out playing together, and the boys had beaten, kicked, stoned, and then stripped Silje and left her in the snow. And she died of, I don't know if, I think she died of hypothermia, but I cannot confirm those details. The case, so due to Norwegian law not allowing punishment of minors under 15, the boys underwent psychological evaluation instead of facing criminal charges. And there's a really interesting documentary about it. It's quite old now. I think you'd probably be able to find it on YouTube. The first thing they did was go and seek out a child psychologist. So where, of course, the first thing that was done in the UK to the boys in the James Bulger case is that they were placed under arrest and they were interviewed. Whereas the first thing they did in this case was that they went to seek psychological assessment for both of the boys. And Silje's mother, it says Bethe Redegard, I'm going to try and say, she expressed forgiveness towards the boys straight away, stating it was not possible to hate small children. And the boys returned to kindergarten just 2 weeks after the incident with support from child psychologists and the community. And the names of the boys has never been revealed. They have remained entirely anonymous. Interestingly, so I'd heard about this case quite a while ago when I was we used to teach a module on youth justice, and this is one of the cases that we used to explore. We used to look at this in comparison to the James Bulger case. So I hadn't looked this up recently, and when I looked it up in preparation for this, I actually found that some recent research in 2021 has raised some questions about the original investigation, and suggesting there may have been a miscarriage of justice. Not that, well, I suppose, I don't know, I suppose that's up for debate if justice was served or not. These boys actually got psychological support and help, and a community that kind of embrace them while also mourning the loss of another child. But they stated in the 2021 re-examination of the case, they stated that police failed to follow up on claims by the 5-year-old and 6-year-old boys that Silge had actually been killed by some teenage boys, and these claims were matched to separate witness reports that were also ignored. An expert who looked at the boot prints found in the snow of the boys who were blamed didn't match, so that there were some other footprints in the snow that could have been other children that were there. They did point out, so the boys were interrogated by the police, and that there was a suggestion that maybe they were pressured to change their explanations over time, and that the original investigation failed to properly examine key forensic evidence like the fingerprints, clothing fibers, and actual boot print patterns on her body and in the snow. So there was quite a lot to suggest that actually this wasn't effectively investigated. So there could well have been somebody else who actually did kill Silge. So though it's a case that's really explored for that, just that response, that how that community and how the country of Norway responded to that in comparison to how we responded to the James Bulger case in the UK.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, I wonder how it would have helped them. I mean, obviously, if the boys did do it, how different it would have been for them, for their lives, if it had been the same for John Venables and Robert Thompson.
Yeah.
But 4 years difference. I mean, I can imagine like a 6-year-old, perhaps, and in all fairness, I guess, just to play devil's advocate, they didn't kill her, they just left her for dead. I know that's still just as bad, really. That's kind of death by, like between like first degree and second degrees. But even then, they perhaps wouldn't even put 2 and 2 together. They were leaving her in the, some kids just don't think like that. Kids run out into the snow without with any boots on.
Yeah, a 6-year-old probably wouldn't kind of make that connection. Maybe I would, not so much the consequences.
What kind of strikes me between the cases, and also the case that I'm going to put forward, is it was a group. Like there was 2 in the Bulger case. There was 2 a minimum in the Norwegian case. Is this kind of more I suppose a peer pressure thing? That one then dares one to do something, and then it gets escalated and escalated until suddenly there we are at the end.
I think there's definitely a group mentality and things like that, isn't there? Because, I mean, again, I've kind of touched on that in the story, because her son Milo, who's 15, has got a best friend, and she starts to worry that between them they could have done something as well, because as the story goes on, she starts to get worried about what might have actually happened, and she basically suspects everybody. And there's a bit of an undercurrent with those 2, even though they're obviously older at 15. They're still only children, really, but there's this sort of worry that the 2 of them are kind of getting into trouble together, and they're sort of, it's one's fault or the other's fault, and that who's encouraging who's making who do more bad things. And I think that there is definitely that group mentality that if someone's doing it, and not everybody does do it, do they? Not everybody kind of gets involved, but there are always people who do and think, well, if he's doing it, I'll do it, or I'll try and do it better than him, or I'll try and do something funnier or worse, or whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah, it can be, and especially if they are wanting attention for what because in a child's mind, good and bad attention, there's no real difference, is there? Attention is attention to them.
They just want attention. Yeah, they just want their parent or whoever to notice them, don't they? The teacher, whoever it is.
And it's all about your peers as well. They are the most important relationships to a teenager.
Well, especially when they have a crappy home life, and their friends are probably all they've got.
Yeah, seeking out a sense of belonging somewhere.
Yeah, it must be even more so. I mean, it's really strong with teenagers anyway, isn't it? As you say, the friendship groups, it's really all about your friends. And so if you've got that on top of everything else, a bad home life on top of that, it's going to be literally everything. So
I mean, just to quote another monkey experiment, as I did in the first one, as I'm prone to
All about
do,
the monkeys.
all about the monkeys. So there was another famous monkey experiment where baby monkeys were given the choice between a caregiver that was metallic but gave food on a regular basis, or one that was covered in fur but didn't give a lot of food. And they would always go to the one with the fur for the hug.
It's such a sad experiment, that.
I know. They'd take the hug over the food every single time.
it does make me feel a bit sad for the poor
It
monkeys.
does, but I'm hoping they were then given a proper another monkey to, you
They
know,
probably weren't, though. That's the thing with that kind of research, isn't it?
makes you wonder what they did to that poor little boy. You know that they made scared of a rat. What was it, Alfie? Was it the Alfie, little Alfred
I don't know
experiment?
that one.
Basically, had this was before any ethics came into psychology, so we were talking quite a long time ago. It was this poor little boy. I'm sure his name was Little Alfie. I'm gonna Google it while I'm talking just to check. Um, so forgive the tapping away. Little Albert.
Little Albert,
I
okay.
think it was Little Albert. Little Albert, and it was Watson and Rayner.
It's always the behaviourists. They're always the one that do
It
these
is, yeah, the
experiments.
Little Albert experiment. He was only 9 months old, and they basically every time they showed him a rat, like to begin with, this little white rat was just lovely, and it played with him, and he was fine. But then the next time they did it, they did like a loud noise and scared him, and then they kept doing it until eventually he saw the rat and got scared
Oh,
without the loud noise.
what were they trying to find out? Apart from if you continually scare a child, they will then become adverse to the thing.
Yeah, but it was the association, so you know he associated it.
That may have been the precursor for rats having a bad rap now.
Maybe. Like little Alfred went nuts and did some anti-rat campaign because he just assumed that all rats were bad.
Hey, he
But
did.
yeah.
Poor little Albert.
Yeah. Or it could just be the fact that they carry diseases and stuff like that.
Mine don't.
Ah.
I have 3 pet rats. Like, Claire, and they are
Oh, do
very
you?
sweet.
Oh.
But yeah, no, they're not on the street. They're not the New York massive sewer rats that we hear about. They're definitely not those, and they wouldn't stand a chance against those either, to be fair.
No, and you see, I mean, I quite often see the Facebook or kind of TikTok videos of rats eating pasta, and they're just so hypnotic, aren't they? As they suck up the spaghetti. Anyway,
Yeah.
Ratatouille.
Yeah.
So I've lost my point completely because
It's like about the ethics of experimenting on children. Or well, we were talking about the monkeys, weren't they? It's the macaque monkeys.
they would seek out comfort. So in theory, if their friends were their comfort, regardless of whether, anything else, then they're probably going to go with the friends over like family and people along those lines, and society in general, one would assume. So that's my kind of take on it, that there's more than one perpetrator, and therefore one's getting egged on by the other, and they're not wanting to show kind of disloyalty, I guess, to their one caregiver. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, it does. That makes a lot of sense, and that is often what happens. Sometimes there is some theory around children have got to be like good in mum's eyes or primary caregiver's eyes. So if she's bad, they've got to be worse. They've got to make themselves even worse than her to be viewed as she's got to be good. Like we're kind of predisposed to it.
Like anti-redemption kind of thing, kind of a feeling like, I can only be who I am if she's good, so therefore I'm going to be as worse as I can be, then as bad as I can be, just to make her look better.
Or just how your whole perception of good will be developed in your life. That's what you'll think is good, because that's all you've seen. You mean, and I'm not saying that parents need to be perfect. Parents need, the phrase is good enough. So it's important to get things wrong as well. But when it is quite toxic and damaging and harmful, that's kind of starts to set out the frame of what love looks like.
And that's very much the nurture side of the argument, isn't it? So whereas that's the whole nature side is another thing again. I mean, I think talking about, again, and going back to my book, we're sort of doing because she's worried that the bad genes, as she's thinking of them, bad in inverted commas, the bad genes are coming from her father, who neither of these boys have ever met. Because she's thinking, well, I'm not like that, but could it be that either it skips a generation, or it's boys that it affects, and he was violent and a nasty man, and now I'm seeing this violence in both of my sons. Is it going to develop? Is it going to become more? Is it my fault? Is it that's done it? That's caused it? So that's the sort of the other side of it, isn't it? Is it just sort of innate in them, or is it because they both had completely different upbringings?
That would be the key evidence to me. If I was that mum, I would be thinking, well, they've had two different upbringings, yet they're still the same.
Yes, yeah. One's her younger son is kind of going that way. So yeah, it was very much, and she then wanted to go meet the older son who she'd adopted, to kind of almost get some answers, find out what had happened to him to make him like that, in the hope that actually it would be so evident that it was his upbringing that had caused it, that it means actually her other son is going to be fine because he didn't have that upbringing. So it gets quite sort of convoluted and complicated in her mind.
Is it written first person from her point of view?
It's written third person, but it is from her point of view, so it's like closed third person. It's very, so you kind of are in her head a bit, and
You're still on her journey. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I always find that's one of the hardest ways to write. I always write first person because I just feel like I can get more of the character in, and a lot of the nuances can then be their personality rather than me trying to fit it to the plot.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because I wrote the entire book in first person, and then my editor said, I think this would work better in third, but don't worry about it. Just think about it for future thrillers. And I thought, I'll just try a bit, and I thought it was much better, so I changed the whole lot.
Oh no!
It took me so long. It was worth it in the end, but it did make it stronger.
Dedication's what you need if you want to be a thriller writer.
Yeah.
I like it.
My case, Claire, that I wanted to kind of bring to you is a little bit older. It's from the 60s, and it was the Mary Bell case, which I think is like the one held up as the first kind of, I mean, there was clearly child killers before then, but the first kind of child killer. And it was unusual because it was a girl.
On her own as well, wasn't it?
Well, no, she was with other people. That was, yeah, she was, because there was another little girl that seemed to be her kind of hanger honor. And she was also arrested at the same time, and it was noted the difference between the two little girls, that Mary Bell was clearly had psychopathic tendencies and was very quick to answer things, and seemingly quite charming as well, whereas this other one was quite slow and very nervous and wouldn't really talk. And they very quickly separated them because of that, in terms of it's Mary Bell that's the leader here, and therefore she is at fault rather than this other kind of slower, more followy girl.
Sounds like us, Nick.
Which was interesting. Gosh. I haven't made you murder anybody.
I'm definitely
not yet.
slower.
But the Mary Bell case was, again, a fascinating one to look at, because unfortunately back then her background, her kind of family life, wasn't actually put forward in the court case. So the jury only heard the facts of the murder rather than what could have brought Mary Bell to that point, because she had a very unfortunate upbringing. She was born to a prostitute who was 17 when she had her, and it was said that when she gave birth, she yelled to the nurses, I don't want to see it, and to take it away. And then they let her leave with her, which was never going to end well. And she continued being a prostitute. Not that being a prostitute's a bad thing by any stretch, but she clearly included Mary Bell from an age of 4 in these sex games, and the Johns that came round. And she was left with a lot of different people. She didn't have one particular home. She was kind of battered around depending on who would look after her while her mum went out and worked. So it was a very, very hard upbringing for Mary Bell in terms of that. No excuse. And she actually killed 2. So she was, I mean, 3 is a serial killer territory. So she was borderline serial killer if they hadn't caught her on that second one.
Were they both at the same age? So she was 11, wasn't she, when she was...
She was 11. The first victim, I think, was 4, I want to say. And then the other one was 8. Well, that might be the other way around. I can't remember the ages of the victims.
She was 11 when she killed them both. They were quite close together. Yeah.
Yeah, she'd obviously got a bit of a taste for it. My 2 cents, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but my kind of 2 cents is the fact that it was all down to control. She had very little control over her life from being a baby to, to that point, basically. She was forced to do things she didn't want to do. And she found that she actually got some control over her life by committing a murder. She had someone's life in her hands, which is the biggest form of control you could have.
Mm.
And she got off on that. She realized that this was a way to get that back into her life, to feel that need again. And then that's why she did it a second time. But she helped with the searches for the little boys and everything. She was she was a psychopath. I'm not saying she wasn't, but she didn't have a cat's chance in hell to become anything else.
I find that fascinating because that happens quite a lot, doesn't it? That the person who's murdered somebody gets involved with the search or the investigation. I mean, it wasn't it Ian Brady or something. I know he's not a child, but he did that, didn't he?
A lot of them do. A lot of them do. And there's also the kind of flip side to that for me is other serial killers that get involved in other serial killer cases. Because Ted Bundy claimed that he could identify the Green River Killer at the time, that he could profile him. It was like proper Hannibal Lecter stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh.
they like getting involved, not just for their own sense of well-being, that they're that their police are on the wrong track or anything, but also just for a sense of kind of power, I
And
guess.
I suppose the thrill in some ways, like it's happened, you might go and you might be planning to kind of go and do it again, but there's kind of, I suppose there's a slight reliving of the thrill or whatever they got from doing it in the first place, if they insert themselves a little bit into the investigation.
Yeah, there's got to be a big element of that, hasn't it? Because why else would they do it?
There could be a kind of trying to draw suspicion away from themselves in a very kind of childish, I guess, from Mary Bell's kind of point of view. It was a childish way of trying to draw suspicion away from herself, but she just didn't realize at the time that no one would suspect an 11-year-old girl
Yeah.
of murdering two little boys. Do you know what I mean? Like it was,
It's like when you're guilty of something, you're sort of guilty of something, you feel like you look guilty anyway, don't you? If you've done something you're not supposed to have done, and you think everybody must know that even in small things, but oh, everybody must know I've done that. As you say, that nobody would have suspected, and she probably, insinuated herself by getting involved.
Well, I wonder the difference. One key difference, actually, between Mary Bell and the boys in the James Bulger case and the Silge Redegard case is the premeditation of it. Because actually, the second one has got to have been premeditated, hasn't it?
yeah, she did it once, she enjoyed it,
To
she
do
did it
it.
again.
Whereas they say, despite what it was that they did in the James Bulger case, they didn't think it was premeditated.
They took their opportunity.
Yeah. And I suppose we don't know. We don't know in the Silge Redegard case about the boys' backgrounds either. We know nothing about these
Or
boys
if it
because there's
was
so
them.
much it was. Yeah, we don't even know if it was them, but we have no kind of background on them or whether. But I mean, it doesn't feel premeditated, but I suppose we'll never know.
I'd be more inclined on that case to think it was teenage boys
Yeah.
doing that, because I think 6-year-olds, they don't have the capacity to throw anything at anything and actually hit it. I'm not being funny, but to throw stones and stuff like that, the accuracy would have to be pretty good.
And they could be convinced, couldn't they? You say you did it, you won't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Did they even know? Were they 15 plus? Did they even know what the age of criminal responsibility was? So they thought, right, we're not going to take this one.
Claire, was there any other sort of rabbit holes of research that you jumped down for your thriller book?
I mean, the main one was that I wanted to make sure I got, although obviously it's a work of fiction and there's a bit of creative freedom, you want to get things like court cases and police procedural stuff. You want to kind of get as accurate as possible because it will just annoy readers and take them out of the story, as you know. So I just made sure that I visited St Albans Crown Court, which is where one of the key scenes is set, because she goes along to watch the trial. I kind of ended up slightly rewriting bits because I'd kind of pictured it being slightly different inside to how it was. And while I was there, a barrister very helpfully talked me through where everybody would be sitting in those rooms. So I knew that there was a glass partition between the main courtroom and where the accused sits, and so where everybody, so I could sort of picture it, so I could make tweaks to the way I'd written it. So that was really useful, and I always like doing things like that because it feels quite, I don't know, it's just quite interesting to see places in real life. I mean, often I don't choose real places, and I haven't specified a place where this is actually happening, a town name where the people live. But St Albans Crown Court just felt like, it's this sort of that area where it's going to be. So that was quite, well, I'll say fun. It's good to kind of to get this. Not all of it goes in, but you just want to get it as accurate as possible. And there were some scenes on the day of the court case as well that I ran by someone who I used to be a journalist, but it was magazine stuff. So I ran past someone who used to be a court reporter, and she'd done a lot of court reporting, and so she knew exactly the sort of way they speak. So I tweaked that with her help as well, and that was really helpful. So that was the sort of main stuff that I did in terms of that.
I think it's those little details, isn't it, that just make all the difference, because you are talking about something that isn't unrealistic per se, but doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and I quite very much wanted to avoid. I've seen reviews where people say, well, the author obviously watches just too much TV and is taking it from there. And I thought, well, I don't want that to be an accusation. There's enough people can criticize enough things, but not that. That's annoying because it's avoidable.
Yeah, I think the one thing that when I was researching The Brother, because there's a court case in that, the one thing that I was kind of shocked to find was that we don't actually have gavels in the courts in this country, that the judge doesn't have them.
All right.
What's a gavel? Is that the hammer thing?
The hammer thing, yeah. They don't have them here. So there's none of this, bang, 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 you're out of order stuff, because we don't actually have them in this country.
Well, don't tell everyone that, because I think I've actually used that.
Oh no!
Yeah. Nobody's corrected me, so I left it. Oh no. Oh well.
Okay, edit.
Yeah.
We'll edit
Well,
that.
actually, interesting. I actually have got the very, very final proof edit here, so I could, if I wanted to,
Take that out.
just have a banging with our
Just
hand.
and do a search for gavel. That's it.
Yes, right. Noted.
Do you reckon it's the judge? What's his name? Who does that?
Judge.
Oh.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Do you think,
Yeah.
do you think it's him who's
Judge
brought that in?
Judy. Yeah.
No,
it could
Judge
be.
Judy definitely has one, doesn't she?
Yeah, because she's American.
Yeah.
They have them in America. They just don't have them here.
It also
wow.
makes me think of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, isn't it? In
Yeah.
the opening titles that the uncle has got.
Yeah.
Has got one.
Yeah. Sentenced him to a life of luxury in Beverly Hills.
Yes, you don't really want that accusation, do they? They've clearly just seen this on
Yes.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and said it's
Bel-Air.
true.
Yeah. So I'm going to include it in my British court case story.
Yeah.
She did her research. I want to know how you writers have these. Where do you get the skills in kind of convincing people to tell you stuff? Because we've had other writers on who have said, yeah, I met somebody and then they told me all of this.
People, I think if you say that you're writing a book and this is what you're researching, they're keen for you to get it right, and they're keen to share their knowledge, I find anyway.
Yeah, I've found that too. If you just say I'm an author, look, this is my website, to prove that you are and you're not trying to kill someone, if it's like a forensic question.
See, there is that, isn't there? Could this be a possible guise for a killer to use? Somebody who's up to no good saying, oh, I'm a writer. Just want to get it right.
In that vein, I went to a kind of a lecture, I guess, from a police officer.
Ooh.
And
they weren't just giving you a lecture for something you did. Now, stop hanging around it.
Now, don't you do that again. So it was a commercial lecture talking about the murders that he'd worked, like the murder cases he'd worked on, the things he'd cracked, and he was a Scottish detective or was retired. And I went with a friend, and when the interval happened, we all kind of piled out to get drinks. And I was sat with this woman that had been, obviously, she's alone. We started talking, and she was on about committing the perfect murder. And I'd noted when he talked about a case that it was a case of someone that had been killed in a back garden. And because when they'd rang, the people in the house had rang the ambulance, they said that she was still alive. The ambulance men then take priority because they're life-saving measures. So they trampled all over the crime scene and messed up the body for forensics. But she was dead. She was dead. But they couldn't really catch the perpetrator because of this. And I mentioned this to her, and I was like, well, it sounds like all you have to do is just claim that the dead body's alive, and a lot of your forensic evidence is gone because of the ambulance people. And she looked really thoughtful, and my friend just looked at me and went, you just told her how to commit the perfect crime. I was like,
Or
no.
what if, I mean, was that crime solved that he talked about? Or could it be some huge elaborate sting? That they know they've got her in their sights. They know she likes going to these sort of things.
No. It was a big
Ah.
theatre, Lisa. It was a
I've watched too much.
You have.
I've watched too much telly, haven't I? I'm not going to make a good thriller writer.
I was thinking, oh, was it her then? Was that? That's what
Yeah.
I was thinking when you were telling me that.
But it was just the way she'd kind of said it, and she was clearly on her own. And I just thought, because normally you go to these things with a mate, and it's just because she sat with us and she was just asking the question. I was like, well, clearly to commit the perfect murder. And then I kind of launch into it, and she's like, really? And it was almost like she was going to make a note. She just had that look in her eye, and then wandered off. And my friend was like, you just told her to commit the perfect murder. I'm like,
Wouldn't the time come up though? Wouldn't there be like, how accurately do you think they could detect time of death?
No, it's usually between times, isn't it? You can't.
yeah, you can't pinpoint it to any degree of accuracy, really, to be honest, especially if it's outside and different weather conditions. And
Don't give away too much. She'll think we've done it.
oh yeah.
Well, I wouldn't know. I don't know how accurately they can do it.
But that is a fallacy. That, again, knowing from speaking to people, that tends to be a bit of a fallacy put around by CSI programs. They can't pinpoint it to any real degree of accuracy. They can have a vague idea, but they can't do it to any degree of accuracy, because that's what a lot of the clues on television programs and films are based on. They start with the kind of time of death and then work back. But in real life, unfortunately, it doesn't really help too much.
And when do you think that's something that thriller readers want? They want accuracy, do you think, rather than the kind of filmic view of something?
I think I think personally they seem more critical of mistakes in books, and I don't really know why. This has been something I've talked about with other authors before. They do seem to be much more critical. You think, well, they do that on this show. Why can't I get away with it? And I don't know why. Maybe it's because you're with the book for longer than you are with the show. I don't know.
I think it's access, Claire, to be honest, because you can't access directors and producers and television writers and actors the way you can access authors on a regular basis. You can always leave us a Goodreads review or an Amazon review and mention something, whereas there's very few places to actually.
That's a good point. Yeah. So we just basically we find out more.
Yeah, we're on the front lines.
They don't approve.
Yeah, I suppose as well you can just consume TV, can't you? You can just put something on almost as a little bit of mind numbingness, just to almost have sound or something, some sort of distraction. Whereas if you're going to purchase a book and make time to sit and read it, you're kind of investing that a bit more.
I guess so. You're kind of invested, and you're holding disbelief a little bit with thrillers because, like I said, fortunately, these kind of crimes don't happen as much as people think. Well, on that note, Claire, let us know about. Well, you've got a lot more than just the one thriller book. So tell us where listeners can find your books.
So they're all on. Well, obviously all on Amazon, Clare Swatman or CL Swatman, and that's probably the best place to find them. But you can, you can find them most places if you were so inclined.
They're everywhere they want them to be.
Everywhere they want them to be, yes. Libraries, bookshops, wherever you like. So yeah, and I have a website as well, which is Clare Swatman Author, so people can find anything that I've got coming up or any new books coming out. That's usually on there. So if I've updated it.
And you're going to give us the links, aren't you? So we can put them in the show notes. So
Yes,
this
I
can go
will.
straight through. We're going to let you out, Claire. We've decided.
Oh, thank you.
You've served your time well.
You have, yes.
You took it on the
decided. Yeah, and you complained about the coffee, which upset me greatly. So,
well, if it helps, I don't actually like coffee anyway. So it might have been delicious coffee, and I wouldn't know.
Maybe I need to branch out. I'm gonna have to get some tea bags and a kettle.
Yeah. Not if it's got mud in it, though. I'm not interested in mud tea.
Don't go nuts. Whoa. What are you trying to do here?
I love that I kind of think about the kitchen as some sort of like mud kitchen that toddlers would be playing with.
Yeah.
When toddlers are bringing you little cups of mud and water and going, this is a coffee for you.
Well, what I like is that you've got me completely invested in that now as well.
Yeah.
You'll never look at like a teacup again the same, will you? Well, thank you for coming on, Claire. We've really enjoyed this. And just so listeners are aware, you've been listening to Claire, who's also known as CL Swatman. There's me. I'm NV Peacock, otherwise known as Nikki. And of course, you've had the delectable Lisa Shepherd.
Ooh, delectable.
Delectable Lisa Shepherd.
I'm calling that a good review.
There you go. Now, where can they find us, delectable Lisa?
They can find us on Facebook, on TikTok, and on Instagram at the Red Rabbit Podcast. They can also find us on Patreon. I'm trying to be smooth about this now. You can also find us on Patreon if you so wish, and you can get early access to the next episode there, and also a few of Nikki and I going down some weird warrens, which we might again. We found another weird warren today, didn't we? So maybe that's another one to go off and investigate.
Oh, and listen to that posh voice that you just put on.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Claire, what's your posh voice? Have you got a posh voice?
I think I'm quite posh anyway. That's what my friend. That's what my best friend tells me. But she is from Doncaster, so.
That's how you get people to talk to you, isn't it? You have a nice posh author voice rather than me going, all right, tell me about this, will ya?
Yeah, I know. Yes, I think this is just my normal voice. So if you think I don't know if it's posh or not.
It worked for us.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for having me.
That's all right. It's been an absolute pleasure. So, listeners, we will hopefully catch you again. Do subscribe to us on your platform. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe to wherever you're listening to this. So please do. It helps us a lot because we are still a new podcast. We will. Well, you'll hear us next time. I always say you'll see us next time, like we're watching you, and maybe we are watching you.
Maybe we have an image now of us in our little hole with our little kiddies play area of a kitchen, making little pots of muddy coffee. Makes me feels idyllic. Yeah. There we go. Which was not what we were going for, really. It was meant to be when we first started. It was like down in the mud, blood, wasn't it?
Not quite in that voice, but yes.
It's got a little bit Beatrix Potter now, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah. We have gone Beatrix. Yeah. We are going to go now, listeners, and you will hear us next time. So
we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.